Hello, this is Connor Stoops and welcome back to another Lumion Legacy HTUC video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about Falkyrie. Falkyrie is one of the most versatile offensive Lumions. Not only is it versatile in its sets, but it's also pretty widespread in its usage across many types of a match. It's very useful in the early, mid, and even the late/end game. Falkyrie can play a very strong offensive presence on any type of team you want to use with Falkyrie, and that's why I'm making a video on it today. So without further ado, let's talk about how to use and counter Falkyrie. In order to know how to use Falkyrie, we must look at its sets, its roles, and of course, what it can be paired up with and what it needs to fear. So I'll be going over the roles first, the sets next, and then the counters and checks, and then the teammates in order. So without further ado, this is Connor Stoops, and I'm going to be going over how to use and counter Falkyrie. So to know the role that Falkyrie can play on teams, we must look at its base stats, its typing, and its abilities. So without further ado, let's get into that. Falkyrie has a pretty strong offensive range attack stat of 125. This allows Falkyrie to hit really hard even if it's uninvested, and can hit even harder with boosts, abilities, and its coverage. However, besides that, its offensive base stats is kind of lacking. Its speed tier of 75 is pretty decent, because it does outspeed almost all the walls in the game. Some walls you don't outspeed is Garbantus, although it's really multi-purpose than a wall. Other than that, you do get outsped by a lot of offensive Lumions. When you think of offensive Lumions like Halvantic, Ikazune, Magbanaya, or Ratodon, it does lose in those matchups. However, Falkyrie does have a very strong move that I'll be talking about later that kind of remedies its speed tier. And one more thing, its energy stat of 88 is pretty decent. It does get you to useful benchmarks like 250, and because of your generally low costing moves, this energy stat will seem better than it actually is. However, its defensive base stats aren't really all the best. It's kind of carried by Falkyrie's typing, but even then, Falkyrie has a pretty mid typing all things considered. Its typing really pairs well with what's best in the metagame, and Falkyrie's typing's usefulness will only really depend on the metagame itself. For example, Falkyrie's defensive typing is going to be very good when a lot of Ice, Mind, Typeless Ancient types are in the metagame. Falkyrie used to be really good as a defensive check to Glaciadia and Novidius when those were popular. However, Novidius is banned in a lot of tournaments, and Glaciadia not really seeing too much use, although there might be a niche right there once Luminami drops off. However, it does have some useful resistances which does benefit it in some matchups. For example, we have the Bug, Ancient, and Spirit types, which Falkyrie can swap in on, and it can check the likes of Harvesect and Obsidian, which have been on the rise as of late. Typeless types aren't too many of that, so you do have to watch out, I guess. But the main thing I want to draw your guys' attention to is your weaknesses. Your Dark, Electric, Earth, and Brawler weaknesses are really prevalent in this metagame. Dark types, as really normally, are always prevalent in the metagame. Electric types are always prevalent with the use of Zip-Zap users and just general electric type Lumions. Earth types, you're always going to have the Tyrex and the off-meta Borok coming in to threaten your team. And then of course, Brawler types aren't really too plentiful in this metagame. They're mostly defensive with the likes of Your Snack, but they do exist, so it is noteworthy to watch out. Right now, I would say that Falkyrie's defensive typing is kind of okay. There's not really too much that Falkyrie can abuse, however, there's not really too much that Falkyrie can fear, so I guess it's alright in the metagame right now. However, its main power comes from its abilities. As I've alluded to, its best ability is going to be Awakening. This is because it increases Falkyrie's stab by 25%, not 25%, by 2 times, so now it goes from 25% to 50%. This means that, let's say Falkyrie is running Nova Blast, it's going to be doing so much more damage to unresisted and even resisted hits. However, even more meta-specific, we have Applied Frustration. If you know your opponent's going to be running a Lashent, which might try and check you when you're running your Nova Blast, because Falkyrie does break Lashent with Holy Slash, but if Falkyrie gets swapped in on when it uses a light type move, Lashent kind of wins that. However, if you're using a flight frustration, you can take advantage of terrifying from Shen or Tyrex, petrifying from what is that from petrifying from okay, I'm just gonna put petrifying from this Lumion on the screen right now. However, this is pretty meta specific, and unless we get more Eerie Stare users, more Teardown users, this ability will be pretty niche and inferior to Awakening. So overall, just to get to negatives out of the way, Valkyrie has a pretty bad speed tier. It's pretty prone to revenge killing, and it does have some common type weaknesses. However, the best thing that Valkyrie has is its offensive capabilities. Its high attacking stat and setup allows for great versatility, and its bulk allows for useful matchup checking. Also, I forgot to mention that Valkyrie's speed tier is a weakness of it. However, with Light Speed Ray, a light type priority move that can be stacked with Awakening, Valkyrie can chip down offensive Lumions in the early/mid game and then pick them off in the late/end game. Which is why Valkyrie, when you're trying to face Valkyrie, I mean, it's best to have a plant type or some light immunity so your team doesn't get steamrolled by Valkyrie. Now onto the set. Valkyrie's best set in my opinion is the wall breaking set. I could have promoted the defensive set, however as of right now, the Radiant Forecast set is pretty inferior to the wall breaking set because Valkyrie can actually do the wall breaking by itself without needing a melee partner to break Lumions with Radiant Forecast. So Valkyrie's set has a lot of variations, but it's almost always Awakening. Besides this, personality will be smart, nimble, very frail. People have also been prone to running very smart, which is most likely paired with the ability, not the ability, but the move Hasten. Hasten is the range type version of Drudge, where Valkyrie gets a speed and range attack boost of +1. However, from experience, Magnify is the better set, not only because Valkyrie will need the Magnify to break offensive Lumions, but Valkyrie with Magnify plus Light Speed Ray is just deadly. Now as for the entire moveset, Holy Slash and Nova Blast is going to be your main two stabs. I will say if your team doesn't struggle with Lashent, let's say for example you have a Krakaloa, you have a Harvesect, or the whole team has some way to hit Lashent, then I guess you can run Metal Blast. Valkyrie can break Lashent without Holy Slash, however you're going to have to run very specific sets which I don't really recommend running. And then as for your fourth move option, I'd rather run Light Speed Ray. Light Speed Ray is really good with Magnify as I've said before, as you can turn usually 4-hit KOs from the Lumions like Cosmere Unleashed to deadly 2-hit KOs favoring into your favor. That didn't really make sense what I just said, but if you'd rather not run Light Speed Ray and Magnify and want to run a sweeping set, Hasten and Airblade is going to be your best options. Airblade is mostly there to catch Tartikis, but if you don't want to run Airblade and you want to rather run something like Raging Howl, I won't blame you. Now for the item, I'd recommend a Light Essence or a Light Shell. Light Shell is very good for breaking Lumions faster, such as Pyrelin, which you'll already kind of do break because it's +2 Nova Blast, that's breaking Pyrelin. I'm trying to think of a specific situation where you need Light Shell. I guess Terraclaw it would be useful for, but Light Essence is the most consistent item. It also helps with Light Speed Ray, because now that move is just doing way more damage than before. Other alternatives is the Metal Essence in case you're already running a Lumion that has Light Essence, and then Shade Pearl. Shade Pearl still has its uses, as you can try and surprise a Mask as a Dark type, or something like that. However, it's much more consistent to run the damage boosting item. Then as for its TPs, the 36 energy TPs does get you to 253 energy, which just lets you do the most combinations of one Magnify and then the rest will be Nova Blasts or Holy Slashes, which is really good. However, if you just want to stick to 250 energy, then run 20 energy, it just works fine. Other than this, you want to maximize your range and speed, and then put the rest into HP. Unless I'm missing something, there's not much specific calcs that you'd rather run with Falkyrie, at least for the Smart Nimble set, because you need to be as fast as possible in case to outspeed the likes of very smart Eruptodons, very brawny Halvantics, or just other nimble Falkyries. So without further ado, let's get to the counters and checks and teammates of Falkyrie. So the counters and checks and teammates for Falkyrie is pretty self-explanatory. I'm gonna be honest, the best ways to check Falkyrie are defensively. Chartiki is kind of okay. It does get a 4-hit KO from Falkyrie's base moveset with no Raging Howl or Air Blade. However, Chartiki's not really the best in this metagame. It's kind of not really the best when specializing into a defense, and its niche on hyper offense isn't really that needed anymore, as there's just better plant types or fire types on hyper offense. Other than that, Plasmoth has always been a great check to Falkyrie. It can take Nova Blast decently well, but the main thing you really like Plasmoth with is Zip Zap. Even though you are most likely faster than Falkyrie, Zip Zap can 2-hit KO Falkyries, and then if predicted correctly, you can bring an offensive check that is going to resist Valkyrie's incoming move and then kill you. Cleone is also another great one. No matter what set you want to run with Falkyrie, like Plain Shell, Raging Howl, Cleone will always win. However, you do have to get into a Peace of Mind war, which you'll eventually win because you have Stratagem with Peace of Mind, or you're running Tsunami with Peace of Mind. Valkyrie's not boosting its defense like you are. So that's pretty good. Other than that, the best ways to kill Falkyrie is by using offensive threats, whether that be Halvantic, Ferroglyph, Totab, Zulong, Protogon. There's a lot of Lumions that can hit Falkyrie super effectively and are faster than it. However, you need to keep these Lumions decently well, at least above 50% HP if your Lumion has decent range defense, because Falkyrie can just nuke them with a +2 light speed ray. And then now you're looking at a team that's going to get 5-0'd or reverse swept by Falkyrie. However, it doesn't really apply too much to plant types such as Totab, Baneki, Banfino. I should have put Banfino in the previous section, but Banfino is a really good check to Falkyrie, even on hyper offense as well, not only because Banfino does have the defensive typing to completely wall Falkyrie stabs, but Banfino has some pretty good offensive pressure with its multi-purpose coverage and baffle. So let's talk about some offensive cores you want to use with Falkyrie. A pretty good offensive core that I've seen being ran competitively and I've been running myself is Falkyrie and Halvantic. Falkyrie and Halvantic are just two offensive Lumions that are really good at wall breaking. And of course, they pair pretty well with each other when taking out each other's weaknesses. For example, Halvantic can take care of Chartiki, just watch out for the burn. It can take care of Cleone, just make sure Cleone is in one-shot range or else you're getting nuked by Stratagem. And yeah, and as for Halvantic's checks, whether that be Krakaloa, will have to be very robust Krakaloa, and Earth types. Falkyrie doesn't really do too well against Earth types, but it does generally break a lot of the melee walls that can check Halvantic. Other than that, I've also been running Falkyrie and Dragodine. The common theme that you're going to see here is Falkyrie and a Dark type. Light and Dark have always been a really good combo in the metagame, even back in the old days where Falkyrie was ran with Ursul, not necessarily a Dark type, but a Lumion with Dark type coverage and strong offensive prowess. Falkyrie's just good with Dragodine. Dragodine can help break Cleone, can help break Chartiki, helps break Banfino. It's just really good for Falkyrie. And Dragodine is just a great offensive cleaner / sweeper because of its remorseless ability.
Hello fellow C.B.O viewers, it's Akil10, and today I will talk about the team I made around Falkyrie HO. Some of you might know me as first C.B.O Redemption winner and first C.B.O Redemption live winner. Demask is there as my hazard setter and as a bait. Falkyrie is known to get walled by Lumions such as Chartiki, Mavamer, Cleone and any other range walls. Here we use Facade Mask to disguise ourselves as a Falkyrie and bait those walls into getting chipped down or maybe even kill it. It's not a... You can also bait yourself as the other range attackers I have in the team like Banfino Revenant. Falkyrie is of course our main star at this team since the team revolves around with it. Halvantic is there as a poison barb's immunity plus another good offensive teammate with the Valkyrie. It covers Valkyrie's most of the weaknesses with the help of Halvantic's ability Pitch Black. This helps me with covering Valkyrie's weaknesses as I counted before, and Halvantic even has a pivot called Zip Zap, so it can pivot out into Valkyrie on melee walls. It's also a great tool to keep momentum. Banfina is there mainly as a flash and flea immunity, and a soft check to other Valkyries. Since Falkyrie got a buff, it's been on a rise. It's also a great setup sweeper with Magnify and also has a great setup sweep option with Magnify. It also has a great speed tier with very nimble personality. U-Typhoon is there for mainly hazard removal and the swap for Magma Dire. Since my water slot was gone, and Banfina can resist fire moves, I got U-Typhoon. It can be a dangerous setup sweeper with Bulk Up and Gust if they don't know it. Garpantis is there as my Zip Zap immunity and the best possible melee defensive Lumion while being offensive. It can swap on things like Vesperatu, Tyrex, Alvandic and any other you can think of. It's also the best slapdown swap on the team since you don't even need your item on Bantis to either damage or sweep. Now our last guy Remenine here is pretty tricky. He's here for the Melt Icicle chat and a soft check to brawler Lumions like Tat Tap, Wrestle and Grimuline and more. Since we are playing HO as known as Hyper Offense, sacking thing is pretty common in here. And Vengeance helps me with getting boosts. I can clear up most of the damage has been done. Vengeance boosted fade away is also great for help for Valkyrie since Revenant is mainly a range attacker, they send out their range walls. So Vengeance boosted fade away actually does damage. It's also a great way to keep momentum and keep pivoting around. It also learns Dark Surge and Mega Jump, which helps to spam dark moves even more of this HO team and helps Falkyrie even more. That's pretty much about the team. Thanks for listening.